Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm here with Sheriff Jason Mikesell to discuss his victory, I think we can call it, over the ACLU, and what that means for the longer term of not just Taylor County, but for Colorado in general. Sheriff, thank you for joining me.
Hey, thank you, Tommy. I appreciate it.
Can I have you start by giving us an overview of really kind of the history behind how this all has evolved?
You know, Tommy, actually this started right after I was brought into office and appointed. The ACLU wanted to know if I was going to do the same thing as other sheriffs were doing at the time, and that I would not work with ICE. And I know I had told him I'd let him know and call him back after I did some research. And, you know, I really looked at this, and the issue I had was that I can't ignore federal law, and I can't ignore the fact that people are able to commit crimes and that the federal government wants them, and that we would just say, no, we won't work with you with this. I just didn't think it was right. So that's what initially started this. They explained they were going to sue me, and I said, well, that's fine, sue me. And they have. For almost 6 years now, we've been under lawsuits dealing with this. And, you know, really, this came down to the fact of to protect a people is not an easy task on a daily basis. And at the time, we were dealing with the issues with our cartels in the area. A lot of immigration is caused by that because those illegal organizations use illegal aliens in the attempt to get free labor from them. So they really traffic them, sexual traffic them. They use them for their illegal endeavors. This is almost like a slavery that they use them for. And it was just sad to me that we weren't really able to do anything about that, because a lot of our laws shield us and ICE from trying to deal with that. So that was a big issue when we started this. As we went along, we had seen that El Paso County had lost a lawsuit based on the fact that they didn't have a 287G program. While we were watching that court case, you know, we determined the best way to go about it was to partner with ICE with the 287G programs, which allows us to send a deputy to an ICE police academy, basically. They're then trained as a federal agent. When they return, we have a jail enforcement model where someone comes in jail and they're arrested, or they're passing through and they end up in our jail, that they would be interviewed by a jail enforcement model, and that immigration officer, because at that point where they find that someone is illegal in this country and that they're wanted by ICE, that deputy is no longer my deputy. They're actually a federal agent for ICE now doing an interview, and they act under the federal laws and regulations, so they're a de facto federal agent. They then do their interviews, and they serve on them what's called an I-200. The I-200 is actually an arrest warrant for an immigrant that has come across the border multiple times. There's a reason why the U.S. government wants to hold them. And what's really been at the center of attention on this is that the ACLU would like you to believe that it's just a civil arrest warrant. Well, in fact, under federal statute, it's not. When somebody comes over the border into the United States illegally, it's actually a crime. And they want you to think it's not a crime, it's just some civil litigation issue, and that we as sheriffs aren't allowed to work with civil cases. But in the reality of things, it's actually a federal crime. It's under statute of a federal law. The federal government, though, under ICE, would much rather handle it as a civil hold, because I think it's easier for them to do so. So they decide that it becomes civil, but the initial contact or the initial issue is criminal in nature. And they really want us to separate that, because there's not been determinations on that made. So that's why all of this has started, because they're saying that it's not a federal law that's been broken. It's all civil, which truly is a bunch of hogwash. It's not true. But since they're controlling the narrative in a lot of media outlets, this is what they're trying to get across.
Now, that brings up a couple of questions. The first of which is, we keep talking about the ACLU they're suing you, but if you look at the paperwork, the court paperwork, it actually has the names of 5 residents of Taylor County, but I understand that that the whole court battle was funded and the lawyers were provided, et cetera, by the ACLU, and that they were really kind of the driving force behind this?
They were. You know, the ACLUs on this circumstance is like ambulance chasers, right? They got to find somebody that is willing to sue me in the county on taxpayer standing. Because once we won the first initial case, which was the first hurdle in El Paso County, they then said, hey, they can't just let it go. Because if they let it go, that means other sheriffs, other agencies will do the same thing I'm doing. So they've got to take it to an appeal. So they take it to an appeal, and under a taxpayer standing, and that means that those taxpayers said that I didn't have the right to use taxpayer dollars to send them to the school. And really, this school was paid for by ICE. The only thing that I'm doing is paying for their salaries, which I'd be paying for regardless. It's part of a budget cycle.
My understanding is that, yeah, the plane ticket, the classes, all their materials, all of that was provided by ICE.
It was provided by ICE, so
Okay.
they pay for those things. So they win in a state appeals court under only taxpayer standing to send it back to our district court again to have a judgment done on it. So that's why we ended up in district court again. The big things that happened in district court, though, was the judge agreed that I do have the right to sign an agreement with ICE in the 287G program. He also agreed that the deputies are working as de facto federal agents, which means that Colorado doesn't have any authority over them.
And that includes you and Commander Tedesco. When they're acting in that capacity, they don't fall under you, they fall under a supervisor that is from ICE?
Correct. So
Okay.
I or the commander of the jail have no authority once they start the process as a de facto federal agent. It's kind of like what we use as task forces when we work with DEA or FBI when a deputy holds federal authority. There's really no difference. So that's why in this case it was such a victory for us, because it said, I can sign that agreement. We were correct. And it says that they are working as a de facto federal agent when they do the arrests inside the jail. And it also said something that was so important that has never been decided on in Colorado, and that is an I-200, which is the document that comes from the federal government that's an arrest warrant, is a valid arrest warrant from a federal agency. That's never been really taken on before. So under federal statute, now with that ruling, it says it's a good arrest warrant for law enforcement to arrest on as an ICE agent. So I think those are things that, yeah, that was a big win for, I think, Colorado, and then also dealing with crimes when it comes to illegal immigrants that are committing crimes in our community.
Well, and that seems to be where the focus of this is. It's not like your deputies are out there hunting down illegal aliens and bringing them into the jail. These are people that have been brought into the jail for other circumstances, other crimes that they have committed, that ICE recognizes them because they have done something beyond the pale, and so ICE gets involved and wants you to detain these individuals.
Well, that's true, and here's the thing about that. So when they come into our jail and say they're identified by ICE as that they are wanted, the I-200 is served on them, that means they've committed a crime or done something, come back into the U.S. multiple times, that the ICE is saying, we want them identified, and we want to get them in our court system so they can start dealing with them. Now, ICE can release them just like we do in Colorado on bond, basically, to come back before a federal judge. So that way they can be seen by a federal judge. And then if that process is that maybe they start to help them become naturalized because they're good workers or good people. But they've been contacted by committing a crime here in Colorado, and the U.S. government wants to identify them as being somebody that's broken a rule, so that they can either deport them or they can work with them on becoming naturalized. So the process isn't that they're going to stay in jail forever. The process is to be able to identify really what the issues are. So, and here's a big one, right? If somebody commits rape in this state and they're from another country, they go through the processes of our normal court, right? And they get sentenced, they do time. Do we as a country want that person to then continue to be, or to be plea bargained and released back into a community where they shouldn't even be in this country to have affected the crime in the first place? And I think that's one of the big things that's being chewed on is that, they have just as many rights as a U.S. citizen. And I go, well, maybe that's above my pay grade, but they don't have a right to commit crimes and continue to commit crimes against the very people we're trying to protect. If, say, they're released from that, well, they're released just like anybody else. But the U.S. government should be able to track those things. One of the big issues we found was cartels. Some of these people we were in contact with had been deported multiple times. They come back into this country. Why wouldn't we want to let the ICE and immigration know that somebody that they have been dealing with multiple times in multiple states that's conducted multiple crimes is here in our state? Why would I stop from working with them on somebody that should not be here in this country doing it? Now, ACLU will tell you, well, that model doesn't work because it makes all the different immigrants in this country feel like it's unsafe to report crimes. Well, I think that's hogwash. And the reason why it's hogwash is that if I commit a crime in my community probably doesn't want me walking loose in that community just because of my status. Why would that group want somebody released back into them that may be using them if they're from a cartel or a different organization for sexual trafficking or for using them for different things? Because they know that as soon as this person gets back out, sent into their community, that if they say another word to law enforcement, because nobody's holding these people like they should or deporting them or getting them out of their communities, they don't have the ability to talk to us anymore.
So it sounds like the ACLU is trying to find preferable treatment for illegal immigrants as opposed to the rights or the treatment of citizens. So they want to make it harder for you to prosecute illegal aliens as opposed to prosecuting a citizen of the United States, a resident of Teller County.
Well, it's such an interesting issue because I don't know that they mean to.
But that's the end result.
But what's happening is an end result where the U.S. government doesn't get to get involved because they're wanting to stop the government from being involved and saying, well, only the state of Colorado will do this. Mm-hmm. Well, here's the other bigger aspect of that. Well, then that means it's all taxpayers out of the state of Colorado. They may want to sue me for taxpayer rights, but I look at it and I go, well, then we as taxpayers are going to pay more because we're not turning them over to the federal government. So Colorado taxpayers get to pay twice on this instead of once when they go to the federal side. So their arguments don't make any sense. And I'm hoping logic prevails over some of this stuff. I mean, they're introducing new bills. They're doing all types of things to stop Colorado and create more of a sanctuary state. And what they're really creating is more of a lawless epidemic. And then the fact that all these people are coming here thinking that we're a sanctuary state. And none of this stops ICE from continuing to arrest people. It just makes it more difficult for local law enforcement to be able to work with ICE to stop these issues from occurring.
Now, this sounds like it doesn't just apply to Teller County. It sounds like it's Colorado-wide, this epidemic of crime that you were talking about. But not all the sheriffs of Colorado are participating in something like the 287G program.
Well, and Tommy, the reason why not everybody's wanting to be involved is that this case had some aspects to it with what was passed prior that if I would have lost this case, could have been an issue to where I could have had my post certificate taken from me saying that I'd committed crimes by standing up for our citizens. So I can understand why people didn't want to jump on board with this right away. They're really watching to see what happens with my cases before they can take this on. In law enforcement, we usually want some type of a court case that gives us the backing to do something. The way this happened, though, I was already caught up in it before any of that started. So I didn't have a choice but to stand for this, and I would have done it anyways. But I think at the end of the day, this does give a resolution to some of those issues and identify that it is okay to do this. Now, I'm sure the ACLU will appeal this. I think they've already announced that they will. I didn't expect anything less. I think, though, it's a much harder job for them now.
Well, I've seen the court documents, and it's thorough. It's very, very thorough. The Judge Sells, he was very even-handed on his application of the law on this. He looked at everything in a very balanced manner and was very, very thorough in the way that he explained everything in his opinion. And so I don't know that, considering that the Court of Appeals can only look at that document and the supporting documents for it. They can't wander around outside of that. It's going to be very hard for them to take this on appeal and send it back to be prosecuted again.
Well, I guess that's my hope, right? I mean, fortunately, I think our district court judge did a very thorough job, and he's a very even judge on all sides and very good at what he does. And I truly think that, most all judges are. And I'm hopeful that when this goes to appeals, if it goes to an appeal, then it'll be looked at logically. And, a lot of those things that are in there really do identify what the true facts are. And it made it really hard, I think, if you read the document, to make a perception judgment as to how the law is read. I mean, it is very factual based. It identifies the court cases that substantiate things. It goes into great detail, very good detail. But, district court judges are very good at detail. That's what they do. So whatever judge, we knew, we believed that the facts that we presented would show why we did something and that we were in the right on this. Even though, the ACLU loves to throw things in the news, basically saying that I'm corrupt, I'm mishandling taxpayer money, I'm doing all these things. And at the end of the day, we weren't going to get into a tit for tat thing, right? We knew that once a judge made a decision, and we came out on top because we were pretty certain that our arguments were just, that, well, then they can come back and try to answer why they said those. And even in their statements that you see now, they're coming out saying, well, we still think, well, that's nice, but an actual judge is determined, not a perception from an attorney who sits on the other side going, well, dang it, you didn't do it right. Well, it shows that we did do it right.
That almost sounds like they're pushing emotion over facts.
Well, a lot of that, though, is for the media, right? They
Sure.
want to spin people up, misidentify the facts, and then really get their point across and try to control a narrative that, the I-200 is a civil court document, and it's not. It's a criminal case is how it started. It's okay for people to come over the border and not be identified. No, it's not. It's still a criminal offense when they do that undocumented. So I think those are the things that really kind of came out in this case. And then, what amazes me is that we have legislators trying to say, you can't work with a specific agency that's a federal. Well, why? That's how 9/11 happened, when there was no communication. Yeah. We have pretty much an open border being overrun right now. What happens when they don't identify these people? Well, they're going to make it to our communities. And when they make it to our communities, there's a lot of really good people, I think, that are coming over that are escaping what they're having to deal with in those countries. And they do great things every day. I don't care about those people. I hope that they live and do a great job. But if you cross the line and you commit a crime, I think you should do that time. And if you need to be identified to the federal government because you are committing crimes at a local level that are using taxpayer dollars now to deal with that person, they should be identified. They should be deported. They should be dealt with, but in a jail model. And that's why we don't do roundups. We don't do, well, you come to my jail because you've committed a crime. You're going to be held accountable. And then you are going to be identified to the federal government, and you are going to go in front of judges with them. And that way, if you commit a crime again, once you're deported, they know that you're a person that's going to keep crossing the border committing crimes, and they're going to deal with it. El Paso County's had 3 homicides last year, or this year, that were people that had been deported and came back over and committed murders in Colorado Springs.
That was within the last month or something, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I go, why? They talked about the fact that, well, you don't have a lot of crime like this in Teller County. Well, there's a dang good reason. If people know that I have a 287G program, do you think they're going to want to come up here, commit crimes, because they know they're not going to get away with it? They know that they're going to go in front of immigration. They know there's going to be documentation on it. So why do it?
The taxpayer money thing brings something else to mind. As much as the ACLU talks about wanting to protect the common person, they're essentially holding you ransom through lawsuit. They're trying to make the county keep paying and paying and paying and taking that taxpayer money away from the government to try to get you to stop so that they can do whatever they want to do. I don't know if that's a fair statement, but it seems to me to be that way.
Tom, it really is. Because what happens with the ACLU is that if they pick on a small county like us, and they can get me to roll over and say, hey, you know what, I'll go along with you, just don't sue me. What tends to happen is they'll go to the next sheriff down the road, another small agency, hey, you do this, we're going to sue you. Teller County decided not to go through this, and we want to work with you on it. Well, they don't want to work with you. They want to control you. And the first time you allow a private organization to control you, well, this country's done. I have a set of laws that I follow. I have a moral and ethical prerogative to do what my taxpayers want me to do, but to also protect and serve. And that's why there's this wide-based statute in this state that allows me to protect my citizens and to do those things that I can keep the peace in our counties. Well, without having cooperation with these federal agencies, I can't always keep the peace because things aren't localized anymore. These cartels come in. We're seeing it in Colorado. You're seeing a huge spike in crime. They're cartel-driven. A lot of these crimes, they're unnecessary in the fact that we're not putting people in jail. We're not documenting these people. We're not doing what we need to do. So, I'm going to continue doing what we do because it's an enforcement model that is working in this county. We're right outside of Colorado Springs, and our crime is not driven by what they're seeing. And I think this has a lot of reasons to it.
Now, it seems to me that the state government has started to try to legislate you out of being able to do this. What's going on with that?
Well, there is a House bill that has now come up. It's House Bill 23-1100. It's 23-1100. That House bill, they're attempting to pass through the House right now, would limit us from signing any contractual agreements with ICE. It has that effect for all of Colorado. And what it says is any private jails or jails. Well, there's only two really in Colorado that are doing anything. There's ours, and then there's GEO, which is actually the federal holding facility, which is a private detention center by Denver. And what they're saying is, no, we're just going after Teller County, basically. It's in all the news briefs. It's what I heard when I did the legislative review in front of the committee. And it's kind of a Trojan horse, right? They're trying to put it on us, and they're saying, well, they're being terrorized in these facilities. There's deaths in these facilities. Tommy, we've not had a death in our facility of an immigrant. We've never tortured anybody in our facilities. They are treated with the most utmost respect. I think that all people should be treated with respect inside of a jail because it doesn't mean they've done something wrong. It just means they had a bad day, they made a bad decision. Not everybody is evil. And I think that's something they don't understand is that they think we're mistreating these people. And I'm going, nope. They get tablets. They get 3 meals a day. They get free medical care. They're getting all these things in places that they come from that they've never had before. And I think that's important because, that House bill will make it to where even GEO, which is that holding facility in Denver, those cities or counties can't even have a contract with them for sewage, water, services that have anything to do with a county or local government. That's wrote in the bill. So it is a Trojan horse. They know what they're doing. They know that they can't go after those federal contracts direct because then the federal government gets involved. And the ACLU knows, and all of these other organizations know that if they challenge the federal government direct on federal soil or in federal court, they will lose every single time, and they have lost, and they have not been able to win there because it's federal statute, it's federal court case, it's federally mandated. That's the issue that we're looking at with this House bill. So they're saying, well, we're going to go after the county jails. And even somebody on the judiciary, and I think he was out of Weld County, one of their commissioners, had made a comment to the lady about, well, can you identify which inmates died, in what facilities, and when? They couldn't answer. They had no clue because it was a lie. Nobody's ever died in our county jail through this. And they get better treatment than they would on the streets. Denver's paying like $1 million a week or $1 million a day, I can't remember, and they was even talking to the governor busing people out of the state because we just can't handle it infrastructure-wise. Well, what happens when this bill gets voted in, and then all of a sudden, all these immigration people on the border are hearing that Colorado, there's a law that says that there's no holding facility here. They can't be. Where do you think they're going to go? They're going to come here. The other side of it too is, and they're not going to come to our county. It doesn't even affect our county when they're going to come here, but it is going to affect all the major metro areas and their infrastructures. The other side of it too is that if I arrest someone here in the county for a DUI, say they're found to be an immigrant, and then they do an I-200 warrant and they hold them under the federal statutes because, well, it was just a simple DUI that originally started, but maybe they're undocumented. What would normally happen is that they would go before a federal judge. They'd go to our jail, stay in our jail or in GO. They would go see a federal judge, and the federal judge would decide, okay, we're going to release you basically on your own recognizance. Make sure you show up to court, and we'll work with you through these issues. Maybe they become naturalized. Maybe they don't. They're going through this process. But instead, what's going to happen is that when there's no facilities left in Colorado for them to be held at, they're going to put them on a bus and they're going to ship them to another state, wherever there's a bed possible. It doesn't mean it's here. It doesn't mean it's in Texas. It may be in New York. It may be in New Mexico. So they're going to go before a judge there and be released. But they're going to be released there. We're not shipping them back here. So they're going to have to figure out their own way. Some of these people are sole breadwinners to their families. So all of a sudden now, this family may not even know where they're headed because ICE can't even tell them because they don't know where the beds are at. And now it's going to extend their court period longer because are they going to see this judge in this state and have to go back there? Or are they going to be able to see a judge now here if it's moved to jurisdictions? So it's going to create a very big backlog in when they're going to see a judge and when they're going to go through these processes. So it actually hurts these people. And it's not a Democrat, it's not a Republican issue. It's a state of Colorado issue because now it looks like we're putting people like cattle in trucks and moving them out of this state because we don't want to deal with them. And that's not the case. I think that this legislation was based on good intentions. They want to change immigration laws, which some of them need to be changed. But what they're doing is something that will not impact federal immigration laws at all. And it won't even stop ICE working in this state. It just creates more of a hardship on these people that are immigrants that are non-identified in this state. So when this happens, we're doing nothing more than any other state where they're just moving people out.
Now, does that sound like the state government is trying to create hardship for these people just so they can shuffle their problem off to somebody else, off to another state? That sounds an awful lot like the coward's way out.
Well, the thing about it is I don't think they understood that's what happens because they don't understand what happens. And now it's being driven by feelings of, we just want to make this happen because this is what's happening. But it's not. They're not looking at tomorrow or the costs of these people either. They're also not looking at the cost to Colorado. So all of these people are being dealt with now in state courts because we can't work with the federal courts. So now you have an influx of people that wouldn't be transferred normally to these cases to there. And I think the cost to Colorado is going to be very high. I just think it gets worse from here with this unless this House bill is stopped.
Now, talking about this bill that the state legislature is trying to push through, there's really been a strong support for you from our commissioners here, and it sounds like our commissioners are out talking to other commissioners throughout the state and getting their support, or at least realizing their support.
And let me tell you about that, Tommy. This was very interesting. So just today, our county commissioners were at what's called CCI, which is Colorado Counties Incorporated, right? So it's a coalition of counties, Democratic, Republican members of commissioners. Like I said, this isn't just a Republican stance. It's everyone looking at the logic behind these things. And they voted that they were going to fight this bill, that they didn't believe in it. So that says something. When you get both sides of the aisle to agree, and even when we did the legislative review before the House, usually I think it's 9 Democrats and 3 Republicans. This one broke 7-6. So people on the other side of the aisle came over too to go, I don't support this bill. And one of the comments was, even from a Democratic side, is, listen, this doesn't change immigration. This hurts counties. And I think that's huge to identify that issue. But even with all of the commissioners looking at this is a legislative overreach into counties to say, we're going to stop this county from doing something.
So it doesn't stop here in Teller County. It can go to Park County, it can go to Weld County, it can go to any of the counties in Colorado.
Well, if you have a legislative body determining we're going to go after one county because of a decision, what happens next week when it's Park County or it's Pueblo County or that's what's scary about this. Yeah. That type of overreach on a knee-jerk reaction to somebody's how they feel about something, that's not what the legislator was designed for.
Well, let me go ahead and read this
Please
quote
do.
that Dan Williams wrote for you. So from Commissioner Williams to Sheriff Mikesell, he writes, "We are the United States. Our strength has always been local government, underpinned and supported by state governments as part of our larger federal construct. This bill is wrong and would mark the first time that the state of Colorado would move to restrict a county government from entering into a legal contract with the federal government to help enforce the law of our land. We have relationships with the DEA, FBI, federal marshals, the Department of Defense, and others, and this is a dangerous precedent. Secondly, this bill targets one county, Teller County, and that is not how Colorado has operated in the past, and it should not operate that way now, despite a well-intentioned legislator's idea. I stand by Sheriff Jason Mikesell and his trained force of ICE officers. We are not hunting folks down. We are a detention facility that processes illegal immigrants who are brought to us. We provide medical and mental health services, legal services, food, and enable interaction and communication with their families until they can be processed by the court and a disposition made. Taking away Teller County's ability to do this will not make the need go away. The problems will get worse and is irresponsible." Dan Williams, Teller County Commissioner.
And Tommy, I've enjoyed such a good relationship with our commissioners, and they stand with me on this matter. And I tell you, I couldn't do it without Eric Stone, Bob Campbell, and Dan Williams. And I tell you, what I found too is that there are other commissioners coming out against this. There's other legislatures coming out against this, both Republican and Democrat. I think this is a chance for Colorado to really come together and to come across the aisles and know that we're Colorado. We're not just one side in that political division down the middle, that we can make decisions together. And I think that, that there does need to be changes at a federal level, but they need to be done at a federal level. You can't create state level things that are hurting Coloradans and then also hurting taxpayers and really creating more problems. How much crime have we seen in the last few years? That crime's going through the roof, and a lot of it is the bail reforms, all the different things that are being pushed forward that nobody even talked to law enforcement about. So what I would ask is that, folks, get a hold of your legislatures. Talk to them wherever you're at. Get behind this stopping of the House Bill 23-1100. We're going to be doing all kinds of news and media, and I'll probably find any seat I can sit in that'll get me in front of people to talk about this because it's important and it's dangerous, and we really need to fight these types of legislation.
Well, Sheriff, thank you for taking your time to sit down with me to talk about this. This is very important to, well, me personally. I'm a resident of Colorado too, and I love it here. And I hope that everybody else loves this state as much as I do. And if you need to talk to your sheriff's offices, get out there and talk to them and get them behind something like this so that we can all increase safety throughout the entire state. And again, Sheriff, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tommy,
for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you for the next video out of the office.